Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Friday, July 8th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Notre Dame game is in 57 days, the game against Michigan in 141 days. We are talking conference realignment again this morning, and, let's be honest, I see the download numbers. It's pretty clear that this is a topic that a lot of you guys want to hear more about, so we're going to do more on it today. There's been a lot of hand-wringing about how this is going to change the sport of college football and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. My guest today just wrote a really interesting column about how this could actually be a great thing for the sport of college football on the whole. He is Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Bill, thanks for being here.
Oh, hey Tom, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure, and always glad to see you pop up on my Twitter feed and see a link and think, oh, I bet this will be a good show, and read the column and say, yep, this will be a good show. So that makes my job a little easier, and I think people are always looking to talk about college football, conference realignment and playoff expansion and all that kind of stuff. So should be hopefully in everyone's wheelhouse today. It has been very easy though to find people over the last week or so who are just can't wait to tell you how this is all going to ruin college football. And it's definitely going to be different, but I'm not sure that means it's necessarily going to be worse. So I was pretty excited that you were thinking kind of the same thing on those lines. It reminds me a little bit of the NIL thing, where I think part of the issue is that people are maybe romanticizing a past and a present that haven't really existed for a long time, where college football players have been getting paid for a while. It's just happening above the table now. And while I think it's fun for people to pretend that this is the first time college football has changed because TV threw a lot of money at it, this is something that, again, has been happening for quite a while.
Yeah, and I had to think it out. I mean, I think obviously all of us last Thursday was a Twilight Zone type of day once UCLA and USC got to the Pac-12, and for guys like you and I that grew up watching USC in the Rose Bowl, and obviously the huge rivalry they had with Ohio State, it was kind of a red pill moment, so to speak, for those who have seen The Matrix, and so it took me a week to think this through because I kept seeing the columns. It's the end of college football. This is the death of the college game that we know and love, and I don't necessarily feel that way. I think it's more of a next evolution of the college football game. And based on what we've seen the last 8 years in the college football playoff era, I'm not necessarily against it. And then now all of a sudden on Twitter, people are like, you hate college football, you hate the little guy and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, no, that's not the case. But and hopefully, and that's kind of the message of the column that I presented.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of the consternation around the expansion of the college football playoff has sort of centered around the idea that it was going to ruin the regular season and that this was going to complete that this is going to do the same thing. This is going to ruin the regular season, and if you think this is a good idea, you hate college football and you don't like what it is now. It's like it can be different and also still be a good thing, right? I mean, I think one of the most surprising pieces of this to me was you laid out a pretty good argument that this could actually lead to a better college football regular season because you're changing maybe how the conferences are structured, how those conference schedules are structured. You're playing maybe some different teams, maybe some better teams, and maybe this makes, instead of making the college football regular season worse, this might actually make the college football season better. So how can you explain sort of your thinking there?
Oh, I'll use an example from last year. I mean, Akron, Ohio State in prime time, a 59-7 game. There's no need to watch that. And don't get me wrong, I'm a Mac graduate and I understand what it means, but this creating a super conference is going to create better matchups. I think you could go 10 conference games, whatever, play one or two Power Five or a group of five opponents if you really want to. But I mean, it's a clear separation here. And I think with NIL, the transfer portal, everything for those handful of schools that can actually do it, and if the SEC and the Big Ten have say 20 to 24 schools each when this is all said and done, and that's the Super League. That's the 48 teams that we're focused on. I think the matchups will be better. The football will be better. If you lose one game in September, it's not the end of the world. A lot of people don't like that. I don't mind it. And in general, it creates a better college football playoff. And I think all of those things are going to happen it, with the understanding that the price is there's going to be some schools probably left out. And that is the part I'm struggling with, is those schools that have built traditions in cool college towns that might get left out of the mix.
And there are no question that there are probably going to be some losers in this. This is a podcast aimed largely at an Ohio State fan base. Ohio State is going to be a winner in pretty much anything, any scenario here. So this doesn't necessarily directly impact Ohio State, but you're an Ohio University guy. My wife went to Ohio University. We go down to Athens, go see games there. I love Ohio University football. We love watching MAC football during the week, but there's also a certain point where you kind of have to acknowledge like these. I mean, it's the same level as Ohio State, but also it's not really the same level. Akron and Ohio State are not really playing at the same level of the sport here. So this is maybe a little bit more of an acknowledgement of that. And if you do have a little bit more of a self-contained, different level of the sport where you're almost, breaking away like the Premier League, splitting away from the championship and League One in English soccer, let's acknowledge that these teams are playing at a different level and you end up with closer, more competitive games. On the whole, you don't need to see Alabama play the Citadel. You don't need to see Ohio State play New Mexico State like you cited in your article. I mean, you're potentially getting more competitive games. And if you're playing a more competitive schedule, well, then you're going to lose an extra game or two. And then that doesn't necessarily make that, one game should not kill your season if you're playing a much better schedule. That makes a ton of sense to me.
The Big Ten does it already, but eliminate Power 5 schools playing FCS opponents. There's no need for that. And you saw the number of 60-point blowouts there have been in the Power 5 or in the college football playoff era. I think I actually charted them all out. That's how sick I am. And, 30 of those games have involved a Power 5 opponent blowing out an FCS opponent by 60 or more points. There's no need to watch that game on a Saturday. Quite frankly, it's a waste of time. And I think, like I said, the prospect of USC coming to the shoe and UCLA or Ohio State going out to UCLA and, depending on what other partners the Big Ten adds, I think they will add more off the West Coast eventually just to create some natural travel partners for USC and UCLA. I think Notre Dame's obviously, we could talk about them whenever. They're going to be part of this conversation. And I think some ACC schools could be a part of this conversation when it comes to it. So to me, it's exciting. It's something different. It's something different than the same old four teams in the playoff every year. And I know that's not a problem in Columbus because they're obviously the dominant school in the Big Ten. But if you're a casual fan or a national writer, you're looking for new storylines.
Yeah, and I think that goes straight to the next question, which was, you talking about why this is going to mean a better college football playoff as well. And, I think there are lots of great unanswered questions right now about what these conferences are going to look like and how big the playoff is. Is this a 24-team Big Ten or is this an 18-team Big Ten? And is this a 8-team college football playoff, a 12-team college football playoff? There's all sorts of things we don't know about. But just by and large, like, why are you optimistic that this, if it does end up in some form of 2 super conferences, say, or 3 super conferences, that this ends up meaning a better and more entertaining postseason as well?
Because I think they'll agree on the playoff a little easier. I mean, I pinned it out once. If it's college football playoff should be more like the NFL playoff. And I go back to last year and the divisional playoff weekend, and I've maintained for years that the best weekend in sports, in my opinion, is the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Those 4 games, and I would say the wild card round, even with the expansion, is pretty good. But last year, when you had, and I'm a Packers fan, so the Niners game hurt. You had the Bengals win by a field goal. You had the Tom Brady come back and then lose. And I still haven't processed the Bills-Chiefs game. That's the best weekend of football I've watched in a long time. And if college had something that could rival that, it'd be amazing. It would be able to compete with that. So, I think once they get the dominoes in place and figure out what these conferences are, it'll be easier than it is right now, because it's not going to be easy right now to expand the playoff, because in 2 years you've had Greg Sankey sit there in meetings with Bob Bowlesby and take his teams, and Kevin Warren form an alliance with George Kliavkov in the Pac-12 and then take his team. So it is a very boring version of Game of Thrones in some ways.
Well, you mentioned how close all those games last year in the divisional round of the playoffs were great games because they were close games for the most part. And the college football playoff has been a lot of things, but competitive semifinals has not really been the theme of most of those college football playoff semifinals. You can remember the real classics here and there. The 2019 Fiesta Bowl was an absolute all-timer, but there's been a lot of Alabama 24, Washington 6 kind of games between, Clemson 31, Ohio State 0. There's been a lot more of that than there has been of the Ohio State Clemson 2019 Fiesta Bowl. But under this new system, I think you brought up the idea that this is first of all going to make the national championship like a really legitimate national championship, because there's always debates about, oh, this team got screwed out of the playoff by the committee, but with more of a gauntlet of a regular season, a longer postseason, you're going to have probably a better sense for who the best teams really are because of that regular season. A longer postseason, you're going to have to beat more of these really high level teams. I mean, whoever wins this is going to be playing a much tougher schedule than anybody does now, it seems like, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you won't have a UCF moment if you have 12 teams in. If you're there's never a dispute over who wins the Super Bowl. Now there might be a bad call in the game, but I'm talking about final score. The NFC Championship loser doesn't say, well, we won the Super Bowl, or can't claim the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is definitive. You win it. You can win it as a wild card. You can win it as a 1 seed. You can win it with a 50-year-old quarterback like Tom Brady. It's definitive. Every era has had this. I mean, I went back, like in the 90s, obviously the Michigan-Nebraska title split was there. Miami and Washington split it. Even in the BCS era, we had USC and LSU split. And then in the college football playoff era, you think, well, this is never going to happen. And then a couple years ago, UCF claims the national title. So if we have 12 teams and we have this process and we have super conferences and a gauntlet regular season, like you said, if you don't make a 12-team playoff, you really don't have a claim to the national title, in my opinion. If you're the 13th best team, that's on you.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the teams that complain they get left out of the NCAA basketball tournament. It's like, you were like 10-9 in your conference. Like, are we really leaving out a team that has a chance to be the best in the country? Probably not. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. This is totally unfair, but it's my show. That's how it works. And you're remote. You can't get at me right now, so it's fine. I can ask you whatever I want. What I would love to know from you is, how does this play out? Who ends up in the Big Ten? I'm not gonna pin you down to a time because it feels like this could be next week and this could be 5 years from now. But when all is said and done, when we are talking about super conferences as a present tense thing and not a future tense thing, who's in the Big Ten? Who's in the SEC?
I think here, if I was Kevin Warren, I would go. I think the Big Ten will have 20 to 24 teams. For the sake of this, since you put me on the spot, I'll say if it was 24, I would go Washington, Oregon, Stanford, maybe Utah, and then I'd go the other direction. I'd go Notre Dame, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia. And now I have a bunch of AAU schools. I have a Western division. I have a kind of an East Coast division. I would consider other schools like Syracuse and Kansas, because now not only do I have a coast-to-coast, every time zone, every region type conference other than the Southwest, I have an awesome basketball conference too, because I have Duke, North Carolina, Virginia. I think they've all won national titles in the last 10 years. They've all won national titles since the Big Ten's won one, so we can't argue about that. And I've already taken UCLA, and I would consider Kansas. I would. I know they don't offer much in football, but I think you could rope them in with Nebraska. And then you said SEC, so their move would be, okay, we're going to go take Florida State, Miami, Clemson, maybe NC State, and then maybe they go to the Big 12 and plunder like an Oklahoma State, Baylor, take some of those old Southwest Conference schools and go to 24 that way. And there would be the 48. So West Virginia, Syracuse, Oregon State, those are the type of schools that get left out here. And those, with my column, those are the fan bases they can come at me, and I would say you're right, because this is the ones that this would hurt.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said earlier, for sure there are losers here. I don't know that there are as many losers as people think, and I think the winners are going to really, really win, and then the losers, it'll be interesting to see, is there just sort of a next league below the Power League, sort of like the AAC sort of has perceived itself in recent years, where, instead of a Power 5, they will say, well, it's a Power 6, really. Is there going to be a third league where it's like, well, really, it's a Power 3, if you really think about it? So that'll be interesting to see. Something else that will be interesting to see next week, Bill, you have one of the absolute staples of the college football offseason coming. Let people know what you've got coming next week and where they can find you on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm at Bill Bender 92, and yeah, if you can read the column and take as many shots, I don't think Ohio State fans, many of them will have a problem with it, honestly, because I'm most of the ones I talk to kind of feel the same way. But yeah, we'll have our bowl projections next week. We'll have our top 25 quarterbacks. I'm going to take a vacation. Then by the time I get back, we're going to be inching up on Big Ten Media Day, which just got a lot more interesting last week. So, yeah, I mean, as always, these are fun to talk about. I think you and I are mostly in agreement, and, it's coming. It's just a resignation of sorts that this super conference era is definitely coming soon.
It is definitely coming soon, but yes, it is not necessarily the end of the world. As this is the it's the end of the world if we know it, and I feel fine. Like that's kind of how where I am right now. I'm in the REM mode, but we'll see how it works out. There's still a lot of pieces still in motion as we sort of sort out who could end up where, when that'll all happen, what it'll mean for the future of the sport. But never a dull moment on in the college football world these days, it seems. So, and yes, looking forward very much to Big Ten Media Days. We are less than 3 weeks away right now. Should be fun, and that pretty much kickstarts the season. So that is coming right around the corner as well. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.